Hey guys, we are in Luang Prabang. We're in for a treat today. We're going to meet with an expat that's been here in Laos for a number of years. So we'll get his perspective on life in Laos. Yes, so we have a YouTube channel. And we just kind of, really what we do is just kind of talk about our day-to-day lives in Laos and what it's like living in Laos as an expat. And actually there's been a lot of interest, and I think people living in America and North America and other countries, what it's like for people that maybe are interested in moving back, maybe retiring, those sorts of things. Even people have asked questions about having a business in Laos. All those questions have come up on our channel, and so one of the next things I've thought about doing, the next step is meeting with people like yourself just to get your thoughts on living your life here in Laos and what it's like truly being an expat and what perspective you've got. So yeah, that's the thought. So maybe we can start, Mike, with maybe asking you a little bit about your background and how you ended up here in Laos.
So I have my primary career in the U.S. was with the federal government, with the Department of Navy, as a civilian employee, and I worked almost 39 years in the federal government.
Wow.
And 5 of those years I spent in Japan, working in Japan. We have a large naval fleet in Japan, and so I was in logistics, and so we were supporting the fleet. And I did a lot of travel at that time throughout Asia, because we had different sites that I was responsible for. And also, I had children then, 4 young children, and we traveled on holiday. So we did a lot of travel.
Wow.
And I really, really enjoyed Asia. I never came to Laos during that time. Laos is landlocked, of course, not much Navy stuff, but I really, really learned to enjoy Asia. I spent a lot of time in Singapore, and so time moved on. That was 2002 to 2007. Went back to the U.S., continued my career, retired from the government, went to work for IBM for a few years as a consultant, and then retired from IBM and looked for things to do. You can't play golf in Pennsylvania 12 months a year, and so I tried volunteering at different places and enjoyed it, but not to the extent that I had hoped. But I spent a couple years in the U.S. As a retired person, bouncing around, enjoying myself and volunteering. And then in 2016, maybe 2015, I decided I'm going to volunteer over in Asia. And I had been to Siem Reap, so I decided to volunteer in Siem Reap because I had some familiarity with it as a tourist. So I went there for 2 weeks, used one of those organizations that places you in various spots. So I used that organization. It was called Love Volunteers. It was an excellent organization from my view. And went over to Siem Reap and volunteered for 2 weeks and loved it. Loved the kids. Really, really enjoyed myself. And to some extent you felt like you were contributing as well. It was a good time for the kids, good time for the teachers there. I still have good friends in Siem Reap from that experience. And I come all that way, and as you know, it's very expensive and time consuming to get from the U.S. to here. And then you have a 12-hour time difference. And so I had figured when I planned the trip, I'm not just going to go there for 2 weeks and go back. I'm going to go someplace else. And so I looked around at the opportunities, and there was an opportunity here in Luang Prabang to volunteer for 2 weeks, right after I finished the one in Cambodia. And so that's what I did. I came over here for 2 weeks in early 2016, in January 2016, and volunteered with a guy who has subsequently become a friend of mine, a Lao guy, who had an organization here who would place you in temples and in the local school, the big school in town at lunchtime, and in another school for handicapped people in the evening. So that was my experience, and so I spent 2 weeks doing that.
Wow.
And I loved it. You know, we were put into situations where, you know, there was no map to follow. There was nothing to go by, no books, no nothing.
Wow.
And so I found that really stimulating and really enjoyable, and got to know some of the young people and what their stories, their backstories are, and how they ended up here and what they wanted to do and things like that, and just got pulled into the Lao, especially the young community, and their enthusiasm and optimism and appreciation. And so that just kept me here.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically, I came here for 2 weeks and I basically stayed.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Luang Prabang is the education center in northern Laos. So a lot of kids come from the countryside in here for education.
Okay.
There's a university here, and there are a number of colleges here. There's a legal college, there's a finance college, there's an agriculture college, there's a teacher training college, and then there's still one private college that I still volunteer at in town. I had gone for, so it's been 8 years. I go back to the U.S., as I mentioned, fairly regularly. Although as I've gotten older and older and older, those trips are not as desirable for me anymore. And one of my kids has come over here to visit, and 2 of them are coming this fall, so that reduces some extent my obligation to go back to the U.S. But so that's how I found myself here through that process, and decided to make that major change in my life and my lifestyle. I don't know the language. I just enjoy the people. That's what keeps me here. I really love the people and the culture and the way that they interact and the way they behave and their priorities and the things that are important and not, and how they react to adversity and all those things I appreciate. Appreciate seeing it, try to incorporate some of those things into my own life. And so, but I'm not immersed.
Sure.
by
That's
any
fair.
means.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because I think here you've got the flexibility as an expat of not feeling like you have to totally be immersed in everything.
Yeah, especially in Luang Prabang, being a tourist town. I don't, so on one hand I'm not immersed, on the other hand I'm not a member of the expat community. I don't drink, I don't go out at night, which is a lot of the folks here, they're expats. They have an active social life with themselves, among themselves, and I don't participate in that. I know a number of them, of course. So on one hand, I'm not in the Lao community, but on the other hand, I'm not in the expat community either. I'm much more in the Lao community.
Are you? Yeah.
My wife's family lives across the street.
Oh. Okay.
And so it's very convenient and nice, and it's nice to have that family feel around you all the time, and it's good. So.
That is nice, yeah. What would you say when you moved here 8 years ago or thereabouts? What was the biggest kind of cultural shock or things that really it took some time to understand?
Well, I don't understand. I still don't understand a lot, of course. But the idea of commitment, lack of commitment, is difficult. I can remember like it was yesterday, one of the students, when I came back, I came here in January, then I went back to the U.S. and came back in June. And at that time, I went to help at a school in town that only teaches English. And I helped there for 4 years, actually, and spent a lot of time there. And I had a lot of relationships with kids, with the students. And I can remember the one young man said to me, "Would you like to go to my village for the weekend?" And I, would I? Yeah, okay. And he said, "Okay, I'll meet you at the school on Saturday morning, and we'll go up on my motorbike. It's about a 3-hour ride. We'll go on my motorbike, and you can meet my family, spend the weekend at my house, and then we'll come back on Sunday evening. And I said, okay, that's great, you know. It's exactly what I'm looking for, new experiences. And so Saturday, I think we were meeting at 10 o'clock. I go to the school. It's not there. 11 o'clock. He's not there. And of course, I don't know how to use the phone and contact or WhatsApp or any of that stuff at that point in time. So I don't have any way of contacting him. So I'm just pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he never shows. He never comes.
Oh my God.
So Monday, I see him at school. What happened? You know? Where were you? I would never do that today, but I was a Westerner.
That's
you know,
what?
Yeah. Why didn't you come? What happened? And he says, he said a couple friends of mine, they stopped by on Saturday morning and asked me if I wanted to play football, so I went and played football. You know?
Yeah.
And that is the commitment in Laos to me. That kind of thing happens all the time.
Yeah.
You know, the negative of that, of course, is obvious, but the positive is they're just in the moment. You know,
Yes.
many of them are just whatever happens, and the lack of commitment is something I've had to learn to, of course, to live with and to appreciate. So that idea of not applying and judging using your experience and your culture and your values and just don't do that is the way to survive.
That is very interesting. I think your point about the people, I think a big part of Lao culture is being in the moment. So just appreciating what's going on at the present. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that is one particular thing I've tried to incorporate into my life, because in the West, of course, we're not doing that.
No, always thinking, all right,
we're
what's going to
always
happen?
Planning and regretting, and so, and here there's not much of that at all, which is, you know, really rewarding, especially in a marriage, for example, where you're not carrying all this baggage around with you for things that you regret. So
that's great. So you were involved in the English teaching, volunteering for a number of years, and then how did you meet your wife? How did you guys find each other?
We have mutual friends. Of course, Luang Prabang is a small town. It is different than Vientiane in that way. And so when you're a teacher, for example, it doesn't take long before you feel like everybody knows you.
Right.
She wanted to have nothing to do with me. Not interested at all. Which I, of course, thought, this is good, you know? That's not a bad thing. So for the first year or so, she wanted nothing to do with me, other than, I mean, we were friends, but beyond that, nothing. And then eventually, she came around.
Wow.
My boyish charm.
Your boyish charm, yeah.
I had actually, I can remember when the worm turned, she sent me a message, and the message said, "Are you married?" And of course I had told her a long time ago I wasn't married, but now she asked, "Are you married?" Which I translated to, "Oh, she's interested."
Yeah.
She wants to know, you know, she wants to ask again, just to make sure before she starts getting involved that I'm not married.
And the rest is history. No.
Yeah. It's, you know, intercultural marriages have challenges, especially when I don't speak the language. I wish I did, but not speaking the language has deprived me of a lot of experience that I could have enjoyed without, if I had that skill. But and likewise with my wife, you know, when you get into things that are complex, it's difficult.
Yeah.
You know? We actually got married online in Salt Lake City from here.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Over Skype.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that used to be available, typically only available to like military people overseas and things, that they could get married online. But during COVID, a number of states apparently changed their laws because so many people were isolated during COVID. Yeah. And so they changed the laws to allow people to get married without being there in person. And some states like Utah let that law stand on the books even after COVID had passed. And so, yeah, we got married online. I wanted to make sure that there weren't any issues with the legality of the marriage in the U.S. And so we got married online, and then we also got married in Laos, of course.
So can you talk a little bit about your, as you reside here, are you here on a retirement visa? Just for those that are watching and interested, what kind of visa options did you explore?
Typically when you come here on a 30-day visitor visa, and which can be renewed 2 times from my recollection. So you can stay here a total of 90 days on your initial visit. If you want to stay longer, I've always used a company to help me get a 1-year visa. So the whole time I've been here, I've been on repeating 1-year visas, and as long as you stay with the same company and you repeat with the same company, the first year you have to leave the country and come back, do a quick visa run. After that, you don't have to leave anymore. Now I'm on a spouse visa, which really isn't much different than the year-long kind of work visa that I had before. It's virtually the same thing. It just acknowledges that I'm married to a Lao woman. So.
Okay, that makes it pretty easy. It sounds like, I think, if I look at some of the other surrounding countries, the visa requirements in Laos, it seems like there are no income requirements for a long-term visa, so it seems pretty straightforward as long as you get through the process with the agency, from what I understand.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I've heard people say that the Thai visa, for example, for expats is getting more and more difficult all the time, and
90-day check-ins and those kind of things.
Yeah. And here, you're right. It's not like that. It's pretty straightforward, and not a lot of interference. But for me, I had someone go through the process for me.
Kind of curious what your thoughts are on healthcare, how you kind of take care of that here in Luang Prabang.
So, for me, I have an insurance. I was a federal employee in the U.S.
Okay.
So I carried my insurance over into retirement. And it's good worldwide, internationally. So I have that insurance. I never use it. I've never used it in the 8 years I've been here. When I need any kind of attention, example, if I want a dermatologist, I'll go down to Vientiane, usually to the AIMC.
Oh,
You're familiar with
yes.
that?
Yeah.
Sometimes to the French clinic, but usually to AIMC. AIMC, for example, with dermatologists, they have someone who visits from Thailand.
I think I've been to that same person. Yeah.
And I've had a couple growths removed down there at that place. So unfortunately, and I go back to the U.S. every year or two, sometimes twice a year, and I take care of the normal healthcare stuff when I'm back there, the typical visits, and assessments and so forth.
Okay.
So fortunately, haven't really had much of a need for healthcare here. You weren't here during COVID.
No. We missed it.
So I was a little uncomfortable during COVID in that my plan couldn't be executed. So if I did have a big problem, I would have to have executed it here, and with the healthcare in the country, because you couldn't travel, of course. So,
what was that like being here during COVID?
It was great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Quiet. No.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. All the. I was much happier to be here than in the U.S., for example, and most other countries, from my perception, that they, a lot of contention, a lot of anger, a lot of negativism,
A lot of negativity.
And here there wasn't so much of that. You know, the people generally do what they're asked to do.
What advice would you give to someone that's considering moving to Laos, perhaps in retirement, has those kind of thoughts in their mind?
So the typical thing, you know, come here, spend some time, a fair amount of time that you're comfortable, and also I think I would try to find something that you can engage in to stay occupied and make a contribution. Most of us, I think, when we get here, after we spend a little time, we want to give back to the community, to the Lao people, and make some kind of a contribution, leave some kind of a mark, especially retired old farts. You know, we want to leave something behind, a legacy, and there's lots of opportunity to do that here. And I would seek that out and be sure you're comfortable with your plan. You know, the bigger plan of what am I going to do? How am I going to make a difference?
That's great. Great advice. Yeah. And your wife, I see, we're here in her restaurant and P70 cafe and pottery classes. Can you describe a little bit about what she does here for the viewers?
So my wife is very entrepreneurial and very creative, and she has always wanted to have a business and or businesses ever since I've known her. She had a nice career in Luang Prabang before she and I met. But when we met and when we first started spending time together was coincident with COVID. And so, of course, everything changed in COVID, and there were no opportunities here to do anything like that. So we just took a long pause during COVID, and then once COVID was over, we had started the school before. We restarted the school, teaching English, which kept us both busy for quite a while. And then she had begun looking into other kinds of opportunities. She's a superb cook, and so a restaurant was a natural for her, and as well as she does Lao cooking classes here. And so she really enjoys interaction with foreigners. Most of her career before COVID was involved in work that included a lot of interaction. So she enjoys that aspect a lot of, and so this was like, these were her ideas. The pottery came about because of meeting an old lady up in a village near here who was a potter all her life, and my wife learned from her how to do pottery.
Wow.
And she was retiring, and so my wife decided to carry on that tradition from that village down to here of making pottery. And so now she makes pottery. She has people come for lessons, but also makes pottery herself and has orders from people in town and businesses and things like that.
Wow.
She has a couple of kilns over there that she uses to fire the pottery. And so so she stays very busy. This building actually is an old building, but I mean the wood is old. The building's new. This building, the style of architecture is called Tai Lu, which is a small Lao tribe. And there's a village about 5 hours from here that's a Tai Lu village. And she went to that village in late 2023 and bought 3 buildings. And they took them apart, put them on trucks. This was an empty lot, and dumped the wood on this lot.
Wow.
In January and February of last year, and got a team of builders to come down and built a basic building in about 5 months. This is my wife. The young lady with the coconut is my wife.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
We've been talking to Mike about his life here in Laos and what it's like to be an expat, and he's told us all about you and the you know what you do here, and pretty amazing story.
Yeah, I hope so he not talk bad about me.
I don't think so. I don't think you could. Yeah.
He's so proud of you.
Yes.
What you done, everything allowed it. That's what he
You
said.
can tell.
So kind of like, what's it like to live in Laos? I mean, for me, of course, I immediately concluded that this was the spot for me to be in, to spend the rest of my life, literally. And it's because of the people. Of course, there's problems everywhere with government and roads and water and electricity. Everywhere in the world has problems, and Laos has problems like that. Roads and things, not all the best. But the main thing about Laos is the people, from my view. The culture, the energy, the perseverance of the Lao people, especially the young people, is something that I enjoy associating with, and in fact get a lot of energy from myself. And so that's for me, that's what keeps me here.
That's great. Do you have a minute just to kind of take a walk around your business? Can you kind of give us a tour of what you do here?
I make the pottery about now 2.5 years ago. I said I want to pottery to live. How I can do just that is about thinking nothing a business, just want to live.
Yeah.
That is time to be started make the pottery.
Okay.
And during that they asked me about during customer come, they said, do you have coffee? I said, no, not yet, you should have, you know. Every customer say that. I said, I learned how to make coffee.
So it started with a pottery and then the coffee shop.
Yeah. I said, they said, you have food to eat, I'm hungry. I said, just to have like a coffee, you should have food, you know, because we're hungry, sometimes we come, you know, you should do it like that. I said, you know how to cook? I said, I know how to cook, you know. And have the restaurant, cafe and pottery, and not yet. They said, I don't want to make the pottery. Can I learn class to cook Lao cooking? You know, I said, not yet, you know. And then I buy things.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's your cooking class?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's about kind of the customer make me do the business,
so
not mine.
They're building the business for you.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a story.
Kind about me.
That's great.
I really enjoy when the customer they come talking. Not only customer, we come to be friend, you know about them. Yeah,
that's great.
I think that's happy.
And I'm sure I know they probably enjoy learning about the pottery or the cooking, and they get to learn more about the culture.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
You just kind of growing the business.
Yeah, customer help to go.
And when did you start? How many years have you had the business here?
This is about 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
2 years.
It's a great place. And it's far enough away. It's very close to the kind of downtown Luang Prabang, but far enough away that it's very quiet here. Well, we'll make sure and include a link to your Facebook page in the description of our video so that people can find it. Mike, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. And we'll make sure and stop in next time we're in town.
Great, my pleasure. Nice to meet you.
All right, thank you. Kapchai.